streaming. Hey everybody, Mungo Dark Matter here, and welcome to Dark Matters. Today on Dark Matters, I thought I'd discuss whether it's cheaper to buy a pre-built PC or to build your own. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Also consider clicking on the bell icon so you'll be notified of new videos and new live streams as they happen. All right, there's always been kind of a debate. Well, maybe it's not always been a debate, but there's been a kind of a question whether it's cheaper to build your own PC or just to go out and buy one. Now, the answer to that may surprise you in some cases. In other cases, it may not, because it kind of depends a little bit on what type of machine you need, what your options are for buying a pre-built one, and any special features you need. So the best way to actually find out for yourself in particular if it's cheaper for you to build your own machine as opposed to purchase it is to go out and research everything. So go out and see like how much PCs cost that are or have the features that you want, so or are in the price level that you want. See what features they have, and then go back. What I like to do is get first the specs of a machine that's the machine that I would buy if I were going to buy it, and then I go and I spec out how much it would cost me to make it, and if I can substitute certain parts for certain things. For example, if you're getting a pre-built machine, everything that's in that machine might not be something that you need, and there may be other things that you might want. So spec those things out and kind of compare prices on it. Now, there's a lot you can do if you can build your own machine or have done it before or want to do that. There's a lot you can do in between buying a machine that's been pre-built outright and also just starting from scratch and building your machine entirely. For example, one thing you can do is if you have an older machine, you might upgrade it. So you might change the motherboard and put new memory on it, put a new graphics card on it. So that's something to consider. Particularly if you like to build machines, it may be worth it for you to go ahead and build the machine yourself and pick the parts that you like. And so you know that every so many years you're going to be upgrading the machine or changing the machine. So you might want to invest a little more in things such as the case. Maybe you like a really nice case. Maybe you want one with RGB LEDs. Maybe you want one that has cooling in it so you can overclock the machine. So consider that. So consider, what you want to invest in for the long term, what your upgrade paths are. Now, a lot of people, when they start out and they build a machine, they'll actually buy a cheaper case first. And as they're upgrading the machine, they may get a better case. They also may get a better power supply later. So they might get kind of a budget case, put a pretty good motherboard in there and other components. And as they upgrade, they may need a better power supply, which they could still use the old case oftentimes. And then they may want a bigger case or a better case or a fancier case. So those are some things that you consider when you're building your own machine. What things that do you really like? Now, when you look at your alternatives to buying like a brand new machine that's been pre-built, you can buy factory kind of assembly line ones, or you can buy customized ones. Now, a lot of the factory assembly ones, you can customize certain parts in it. But there are also manufacturers where you go to them and they'll build everything you want about that machine as though you built it yourself. They'll even paint the case of the machine whatever color you want. So that's something to consider if you're going out to what you're getting built. Now, when you talk about a regular machine that you may be using for work or for home, you may only need a lower end machine or a mid-grade machine. When you're talking about gaming machines, you might want really a high performance machine, in which case you'll want to maybe overclock the machine. Maybe you don't want to overclock it, maybe you do. But if you want to overclock it, you need to consider, you may need a bigger power supply. You may need parts to overclock it. You'll need a better motherboard probably, or one of the main differences in the more expensive motherboards than the cheaper ones is that you can overclock them. They have the ability to do that. So you have to consider all of these things when you're purchasing it. So there are other things you can do to save money on a machine without totally building it. As I mentioned, you could just take your old machine and upgrade it. But you can also go out and buy a new machine that has a lot of the features that you want, but you may want to upgrade certain features on it yourself. For instance, often it's cheaper to buy a machine with a little less memory in it and upgrade the memory yourself, because the manufacturers have a tendency to charge you a little more for extra memory, particularly Apple. So you may want to take a look at how much more it costs you to get the extra memory, because you could go to a company like Crucial.com, buy your own memory and pop it in there and save a few dollars on that. It's really pretty easy to change memory, so that's not a huge issue. Another thing is you can look at what type of video card you want. You might be able to get a better deal on a video card and add it later than what the manufacturer charges you. On the other hand, the video card in a pre-built machine, when they're factory built, they buy lots of video cards, so they may be able to get it at a better price. But there is a big advantage in putting your own video card in, because you can get the best video card, whatever type of video card you want. When you purchase a machine, they may not have the particular card that you want. So in that case, you might get a good deal on a machine that had a really fast CPU in it, good memory, or memory that you could upgrade, and then you might put a video card in it. Now, another alternative that a lot of people may or may not think of. Now, some people might consider buying a used machine. I don't like to buy used machines typically, particularly if it's for a primary machine, because they're not under warranty and you don't know what condition they're really in. You can buy something called a recertified machine, and you can do this with other electronics too, where they use some used parts in it, but they recertify it. Basically, they test the parts and they may polish up the parts or whatever they do to refurbish the parts. That's what I meant. You can get a refurbished machine, not a recertified. A refurbished machine, and what they do is they recertify the machine, and they will use some used parts, and not all the parts are brand new, or there may be some parts they had left over or whatever. But they'll kind of mix and match. They basically refurbish an older machine and may have the case on it, the old case, and maybe the old power supply on it, and they may put a new motherboard in it, or they may test and recertify that motherboard. Refurbished electronic devices are often a really good deal, and so that's something you may want to consider. So you might get a refurbished machine and save yourself some money, and then you might upgrade the video card and save yourself some more money, as opposed to starting everything from scratch. When you're building a machine yourself, the other thing you can do is you can kind of use the same strategy they do when they refurbish machines, where they're using parts from older machines and kind of retasking them. So for instance, you might have an old machine and you want to put a faster CPU in it. So you might replace the motherboard and the CPU, and you might reuse your graphics card, your case, and you might even reuse your hard drive from it. So there are parts you can use within it. In fact, many people, or probably most of us at this point, will reuse our monitor. Like, we might spend some money on a monitor, and when we get a new machine, we keep the monitor because the monitor is still good, and that saves us some money on buying a machine. So when you're building your own machine or upgrading your own machines, consider the parts as something just like your monitor. You might keep some of them and replace other ones. So you might want to invest in the parts that you might keep longer, like a case, a really nice case, particularly if you want a case that's kind of fancy and has some lights on it. You might invest in the power supply because the power supply will last some time. So if you have a better power supply, you can keep that and then replace the motherboard and the CPU and eventually the graphics card. And if you're spending a lot on a graphics card, there may be instances where you may actually want to upgrade the motherboard, but the graphics card is perfectly well, and you invested a lot in that. So you can move that over. The thing you need to be careful about with graphics cards is to make sure they have you want to make sure that when you replace a graphics card, they have the same type of slot, or the new motherboard has a slot that will accept the graphics card you have. So that's one thing always you should bear in mind when shopping for a graphics card. If the computer you have currently is using the right type of slot for that types of graphics cards, because periodically they change the slots that graphics cards are using, and when you use any sort of expansion card in a computer, you want to make sure that expansion card will fit in the type of slot. And that's just general advice for now and for the future, because the slots are going to be changing probably always. And so a lot of graphics cards will take a better slot than the rest of the slots that are in the machine. Usually they have a more powerful or a faster slot for the video card, so you need to make sure that your card is compatible with that. So that's pretty much the topic right now on whether it's cheaper to buy a new computer that's pre-built or to build your own. The answer is basically most of the time it is about the same price, except you have to build the machine. So a lot of times you don't save a lot, but it depends on the machine. So you really need to spec out a pre-built machine that you would consider buying, and then see how much it would cost you to get those parts. And you'll find, you may save some money, particularly if you have other parts, as I said, that you can reuse. I'm Mungo Dark Matter, and this has been Dark Matters. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Also consider clicking on the bell icon so you will get notified of new videos and of new live streams as they happen. Well, that's it for this live stream. And I will talk to you next time. And whatever you do, enjoy technology.